All right, hello everyone. It is July 2nd. We just had our field day yesterday. I really want to thank Bailey Janks with Limagrain. Bailey, you came to the field day, talked about all these varieties with our growers. Once again, I have a very good track record of picking the hottest day of the year for our field day. We don't do that on purpose, but anyway, you know why I'm not a gambler, because I'm not very lucky. Anyway, I want to thank you. Very hot day yesterday. We were going to do this video after the field day. 95 degrees. I think you drove all the way home to Pendleton. That's your home. Came back this morning. I think it's 9:30 the next day. So thank you, Bailey.
Yeah.
Very impressed with your knowledge.
Oh, boy.
Really lucky to have Bailey in the wheat industry. Of course, you can see the majority of the soft white wheats that we're selling now on the commercial end are Limagrains, and the pipeline's full, some really good experimentals. But gonna hand it over to you. You talk about some of these. I have my favorites. I think you have some favorites, and
Yeah, well, thank you for having us today. Thank you for having the field day yesterday. This is a really great opportunity to showcase, what released varieties we have, as well as what we have on the experimental side to kind of fill in that pipeline as these varieties age and find their spot. One thing I did notice yesterday is that we have more experimental varieties in this trial than we do released varieties, which to me is a really good sign, because that means that we're doing our job as a breeding program to bring you guys the best genetics, that next generation of genetics. Some of these experimentals have some duet and shine in their background, so we're really excited to see those top performing varieties then go on to the next generation after that. So to start things off, we're going to talk here about Shine, LCS Shine. I think almost everyone at this point has grown Shine or has at least heard of Shine. It's onless, medium height, more of that early to medium maturity. It's in that sweet spot. It's not too early, it's not too late. It's done really well in this region. I think it's topped Kyle's yield trials for a couple years now. It's not going to go anywhere, but we do have some Shine crosses coming down the line that I think are going to be a really nice addition to some of these Shine blends going out. I think we're going to talk about some Shine blends later on, but there's definitely a lot of options for growers to blend in with this Shine that has done well for them throughout the years. Next, we have Norwest Tandem. So this is a joint release out of the Oregon State University and Limagrain program. This is a little bit on the older side, I think, at this point, but it's done really well for everyone. My predecessor called Norwest Tandem the darling of the program. It's medium maturity, medium height. It's kind of one of those varieties that you can plant on any type of ground and it'll get you a really decent crop. Great disease package, great stripe rust resistance, but as these varieties age and as they get older, there's obviously new genetics to come in and take their place. So I think we have some varieties that I think will do well in this tandem spot in the market. Up next, we have LCS Hefe. I think it's almost kind of a cop-out to say that Shine is my favorite, because Shine can be everyone's favorite. So you got to kind of share the love to some of these other varieties in the trials as well. LCS Hefe is a duet by Art Deco cross. So if you've ever grown Art Deco, you can see that lime green color that Hefe brings to the table. It's a little bit later on the maturity side than Shine. And one thing I do want to point out is that it is photoperiod insensitive, whereas Shine is photoperiod sensitive. And what I mean by that is photoperiod sensitive varieties, they're going to wait for the days to get a little bit longer before they really start to grow and put that energy into producing. So if you've noticed, your Shine probably likes to hang out all winter long. Our breeder likes to say that she likes her beauty sleep. So she waits until the spring to really wake up and really get going. Whereas something like Hefe is photoperiod insensitive. So something that is photoperiod insensitive is if it's above 33 degrees, in the winter time, it's going to be starting to grow. It's going to be pushing as much as it can given the weather circumstances. This variety, LCS Hefe, is not going to be sitting around all winter long. I like to say LCS Hefe is partying all winter long while Shine is sleeping. Next up, we have LCS Kamiak. I think Kamiak is going to be a really nice addition to the PNW Co-op lineup this year. It's very early maturity, pretty decent straw strength. It does not carry PCH1, so make sure to keep an eye out on that. But it has really great stripe rust resistance. Like I said, it's very early maturity. What I like about early maturing varieties is that on a year like this year, where it gets really hot really quick, you want something that's going to beat that heat and finish out before, before it gets really hot. Something like, on the later maturity side, which we didn't talk about, was LCS Blackjack. LCS Blackjack is on that later end of maturity. So on these years where it gets really hot really quick, the test weight and your yield is just going to kind of start to fall off. Something like Kamiak is going to carry a really heavy, really good solid test weight, good solid yield potential for this region. So we're pretty excited about where it's going to go. Up next, we have LCS Fairway. This is a new release out of our program this last fall. As you can tell, it's very short. One thing that I do like to mention about this variety, though, is don't let the height scare you, especially if you're worried about it being too short to cut. What I've seen with LCS Fairway is when you do blend it with another variety, if you can kind of match that height just enough, that shorter variety will drive up as much as it can to reach that canopy cover. So LCS Fairway, like I said, it's very short. It's got really great stripe rust resistance. It does carry a really nice test weight to it as well. So you can blend this with a variety that you're worried about some test weight issues or some straw strength. If you're worried about shine potentially going down in your corners or in some of those higher rainfall areas, you can blend something like Fairway into it and it'll help stand up. What I like about Fairway is that it has what I call punchy straw. So if you punch it, it punches back. It's got really, like I said, really great straw strength, and we're excited to see how it does to help keep some of those lodgy type varieties to stand up. Lastly, here we have LCS Mazama. So Mazama is another one of our new releases from this last fall. It is an Assure by Tandem Cross. So we're pretty excited about this one. It's photoperiod insensitive, so it is going to get up and get going. It is on the earlier end of maturity, not as early as Kamiak, but right in that same kind of grouping of timing. It's got that nice Assure look to it. It's very leafy, puts out a lot of biomass. The heads on it look really, really nice. We're pretty excited about how this one's going to turn out for you guys. I think, potentially a Mazama Kamiak type of blend are going to be really nice for those drier years that we're experiencing more of.
Bailey, I just want to point out, so Shine, Hefe, Kamiak, I believe the last 4 or 5 years, especially here at our Genesee site, very high yielding site, but those 3 varieties top the yield charts in that order. This is the first fall we really have wide production of Hefe. Pretty excited about that. I think, Duet was always a really good variety. Great disease package, just got way too tall.
Yep.
Art Deco, on the other hand, very weak winter hardiness.
Yeah.
We were testing it in our trials 12, 15 years ago. That variety's been out a long time.
Yeah, Art Deco was one of the first varieties that Limagrain brought to the market from Europe. So it was kind of the start of Limagrain in the PNW, and it's really exciting to see how we've taken that set of genetics and adapted it to the PNW to really get you guys something like Hefe that's going to do really well on this ground around here.
Yeah. Art Deco, very weak winter hardiness. I think 3 out of the 10 years we had in the trials, it didn't make it through winter.
Yeah, and that having Art Deco as a parent on Hefe, I would caution guys on planting Hefe in the first go around. I think Hefe is probably something that's more on that medium to later side of your planting dates, just because the earlier you plant it, with it being photoperiod insensitive, the second it hits the ground, it's going to want to start growing. The more biomass you put on going into the winter, the earlier that it gets, that's just where you start to get a little bit of that gray area of what's too early and what's going to get bit by frost. So
that's a good point. This trial, we seeded it last September 17th, fairly early. We had actually, I think we picked up over an inch of rain first week of September. So we actually had moisture out here that we seeded into. I think that's one thing we really promote growers. If we get that good fall moisture early, take advantage of it.
Absolutely.
Seems like most years we don't get it. We're dusting wheat in, the end of September and praying for rain. Sometimes that rain doesn't come till the end of October. And we have really small wheat going into winter. I think getting that crown established. On the other hand, this is 2-year rotation ground. This is winter wheat in 23. Because of that, and small trials, there's a lot of compaction out here. We try to stay out of these, you know, and we run pretty small equipment, but there's still quite a bit of compaction. A lot of frost heaving this spring back here. The 300 range, there's a ton of Sep Stripe. This is turning out to be a really good Sep Stripe nursery. I think Bailey, I brought you and Dylan out here a couple of weeks ago. You guys were able to get some really good ratings, especially on some of your experimentals. But, you know, I want to point out Hefe stood up really good. Shine holds up really good. Kamiak, you know, pretty good, honestly.
It's all right, yeah.
I mean, there's some white heads in there in the back. Most of those have grain fill, though. And I think we saw that was like Ovation. That was a variety back in the mid 2010, 2015 on a lot of acres till LMA took it out, falling numbers. But it was one of those varieties that would express some Sep Stripe, but it still would kind of push through it and actually have really good yield potential, or still yield really good. So
yeah, and that's, you know, one thing that, you know, it's nice to see in these plots when we do have a higher disease portfolio in a year, because it gives us a good idea of where we can push these varieties, where we can place them. It is, you know, almost a little bit disappointing when you do see a plot completely taken out by something, you know, because you really want that variety to do well. But at the same time, I would rather see it early on in these plots than have it go widespread and have a bunch of growers dealing with that issue and us not knowing about it. So yeah, Kyle said Kamiak does have the potential to get a little bit of Sep Stripe, but it does push through it pretty well. Fairway, we did notice that Fairway does have a little bit of a susceptibility to Sep Stripe, but still pretty hopeful that it can push through that on the yield side. So.
Right, Bailey, we moved down into the blends. So here at P&W, we sell a lot of blends. In fact, I would almost say 55–60% of the seed that we sell in the fall goes out in some form of a blend. I think there's, you know, what's important is really try to find that synergy between 1, 2, or 3 varieties. If one has a weakness, hopefully you have another variety out there that offsets that weakness.
Absolutely.
It kind of like a really good insurance policy.
I agree.
In case you have one variety that maybe flops in a growing season. Just to the right of you, that's our old Trident blend. That was our biggest seller this last fall. It had Shine, Tandem, Exceed. Very early, I think fields around anywhere on the Palouse. We have it from Lewiston, Idaho, all the way up to Bonners Ferry. It's going to be one of the first ones to cut this year. Probably Exceed. That variety is probably the hardest hit out here in our trials from Sep Stripe. We saw that last year in a couple of our trials as well. I think that variety's probably because of that. I think we're going to probably replace that one in our 3-way blend. Kamiak in 2021, that won all of our trials that year with the drought year. Like you mentioned, extremely early. We really like this. We have Shine, Hefe, Kamiak. You have 2 varieties, Shine and Hefe. They're a little more medium maturity. Kamiak's early. 2 are photo period insensitive. One, of course, Shine is. We'll see how this does. We have it in we have 4 farmer script trials this year with this in it, and then of course all of our small trials like this. You have a couple favorites out here you think that might be really good as well? And
yeah, I mean, this 3-way blend is something that I think is going to do really well. You know, it has done really well. I'm excited to see, you know, what that top end yield potential of this blend could be. You know, like Kyle said, you've got 2 photoperiod insensitive varieties, Kamiak and Hefe, while Shine, like I said earlier, is going to be sleeping all winter long, but pushes really well in the spring. Kamiak is going to be one of those first varieties to start wanting to close the rows because it grows so fast in the spring. So I really think this is going to be a good blend, especially with that trend of warmer earlier years that we're seeing in this region. I think, you know, you're covering all of your bases by having a mixture, but just the right mixture of maturity on the varieties in this blend. So going down next to Kyle, we've got some Shine Hefe. I really like this Shine Hefe blend. You know, you've got your photoperiod insensitive with Hefe, your photoperiod sensitive with Shine. You know, you've got your ons in there. elk and deer can be a problem with shine, something to do with the awnless. The elk don't like awns, deer don't like awns. And then also shine's color, I think that kind of gives it a little bit more of a pop to some of the animals that are coming through. It has, that lighter color coming into the spring. And I think the animals are just more attracted to it. So having something blended in there with some awns will definitely help keep some of those animals out. Like really great stripe rust resistance. You're gonna have a good test weight with Shine Hefe, kind of covers all of your bases on that front.
Bailey, a lot of our growers are Trident blend. We really tout it for that 195 corridor. Top Lewiston Hill up to through Roselia. A lot of it goes on summer fallow. So we need something really good stripe rust package, hopefully decent on strawbreaker foot rot, but really has to stand.
Yeah.
And that's one of the issues we've seen with Shine. It doesn't have many flaws at all. It is so solid, but that's probably its biggest weakness. Seems like Shine, even around here on overlaps, corners, we'll see Shine go down about every year. I think if we'd get maybe that wetter harvest where we're cutting really good Shine, I think the whole field could maybe go flat. Hefe standability, pretty solid.
It's much better than Shine. I have seen Hefe go down under irrigated trials. Okay. But that's obviously very heavy irrigation, a little bit heavier soils. It's really hard to keep some wheat standing up in some of those circumstances. Yeah. So I think Hefe Shine will be a really nice option for keeping those corners to stand up. And a little fun fact about Shine was that it almost was not released because of its lodging capabilities. So we're really happy that we did end up going forward with it. Most of the guys that I talk to are okay with Shine going down in their corners because they know it's going to be a really good yield that year. So.
Looking at Shine Kamiak, this one we're pretty proud of. We put out around 30,000 acres this last fall, quite a bit down here around Genesee. 2021, Kamiak won our trials with the drought. Interesting, last year in our variety strip trial, we were running some PGRs like Palisade and some Raleigh, some different fungicides. Kamiak won that trial. Barely, but it did beat Shine by about 3 bushel. I think the average of the strip trial was in the low 170s. So really has that high end yield potential too. So pretty excited. We'll take these to yield. We're starting to clean seed. Harvest is going to start coming in the basin in about 10 days. So we'll wait patiently before we get a lot of this data in and figure out which way we're going to go on our blends this fall. Right, Bailey, we are standing in a big block of Encore, BI Encore, CL Plus, brand new variety for us. We actually had quite a bit of seed production that we sold last fall, so I think we have it scattered on quite a few acres. We'll get a really good feel for how this variety does this year. I've always been a big fan of it. I always told Bailey if you've never grown Timothy hay, grow this, because until it throws ahead, that's what it looks like. A ton of foliage. Really like it for a recrop scenario. In fact, this is a seed treat trial. We have, I think, 25 different either fungicides or plant nutrition products that we're looking at seed treat. What we did here, this was actually a block of rye and soft white spring wheat last year, looking at different foliar products on Ryan. So I really wanted this year to maybe put our seed treats in a tougher environment, weighted. We had a lot of volunteer out here, got a good kill on that. There is a plant here and there, Brian, that made it through. But seeded this trial on October 20th, so almost 5 weeks later than our variety trials down here. As you can see, Encore, late seeded in that heavier straw environment. And I think a lot of growers this fall are looking at recropping, especially with the spring wheat as short as it is this year. That this is probably a really good option. You've been a fan of it too. What have you liked about it?
Yeah, so I really like I like it for the same reasons that you do. In the spring, it's one of the first ones to really want to close the rows. Similar to Kamiak, it has really great green up potential in the spring. When you're using a clear field variety, most of the time you're using it for its clear field potential. And so another tool in the toolbox is having that early spring green up to kind of choke out some of those smaller weeds, especially if you're coming out of some really rough ground that you need an extra helping hand on controlling those weeds. Another thing I really like about Encore is that it's got really great stripe rust resistance. So this is a release out of the Varsity Idaho program, which is a collaboration between Limagrain and University of Idaho. And some of our early releases from that program, UI Magic, VI Voodoo, you're really starting to see that stripe rust tolerance break down over the years. I don't have that concern about Voodoo, or I'm sorry, about Encore. Encore has shown really great strong stripe rust tolerance. It is on that medium side of maturity, so it's not going to be as early as some of those early varieties that we talked about just a little bit ago. But from what we have seen, it's got really great straw strength. It's got really good end use quality, good falling numbers, and it's just kind of overall a really great variety. One cool kind of thing that I'm doing in Walla Walla is I have a couple of plots of Encore, and I'm actually grazing it, I guess you could say, but I'm grazing it with a weed whacker, so it's not 100% accurate, but more or less just trying to see what its yield capability is if someone did want to graze it, with its big nice green spring green up. If there's an opportunity for some guys to throw some cows on there, in part of that rotation, I think that it would be a tool. Looking at those plots in Walla Walla, looking at them, I can't tell a difference on yield, and I made sure to weed whack them down to the ground even after they threw out the first node. So I'm pretty excited to see what the comeback capability of this variety is. In the Central Plains, they urge growers to graze some of their varieties because they tiller out a little bit nicer. So if that's something that we can kind of unlock in that potential of VI Encore, I think that's something that we could do a little bit more looking into.
I think another thing I've noticed with Encore, especially in that recrop or maybe 2-year rotation, really good on crown diseases, dryland foot rot, very solid. This year with the, we've had a couple hot spells, early June or even end of May. A lot of varieties kind of blew up early. This one's been very solid. And then the other thing is very good on Cephstripe, Cephalosporium. In our third range down there, this one's pretty solid. Shannon had an NDVI drone out here about 3 weeks ago. Got some really good pictures of all our trials, but it was amazing what varieties in plant health were really showing that Cephalosporium, a couple of weeks ago. This one, pretty solid. Pretty excited about it. If you don't have it on the farm this fall, this would be one I'd definitely consider if you're thinking about recropping a field or two. All right, Bailey, we moved across the creek. This is our hard red winter wheat nursery. On the end of it, we actually have a foliar fungicide trial, looking at some products. But this side of the creek, I haven't raised a lot of winter wheat right here. A lot of years, if it's a wet winter, the creek will actually jump out of its bank and this will kind of get flooded. That did happen back in the end of February, kind of that back range. It's amazing though how most of these varieties grew through that. I don't know what our hard red winter wheat sales are going to be this fall. It's very seldom that you actually see hard red being valued less than soft white. So I think sounds like the lower Midwest, they're cutting another big hard red winter wheat crop. There's still a lot of wheat in the bins back there. So Genesee all the way up to Pullman Rim, that kind of Kamiak Butte area has always been a big hard red winter wheat area for us. A lot of growers love growing it. I think one of the reasons why we've always seen higher yield potentials on the hard reds, on the Palouse. I think a lot of that maybe is fertility. Growers are managing to try to make protein, especially on those wet years. They might have an extra 30, 50 pounds of nitrogen out there, and they're really seeing those top yields. Once again, you're kind of leading the pack on the soft whites. You're leading the pack on the hard reds, my opinion. I think we have a couple new ones out here. One we're really excited about. Bailey, kind of give us some highlights of each of these.
Yeah, so we'll save the best for last because I've got Blackbird and Missile right here. So LCS Blackbird, it's out of our European germplasm. It's obviously a little bit shorter than some of these other wheats that are grown right next to it. It's going to be one of your earliest maturing hard red winter wheats in this plot. A nice thing about Blackbird as well is that it also has soil-borne wheat mosaic virus resistance. I've seen some circles of Blackbird go over 200 bushels, so we're pretty excited to see how this one performs for you guys. It's got really decent straw strength. I don't worry about it going down at all on you guys. And like I said, that early maturity on years like this year especially are going to be a helpful tool in the toolbox. On the opposite end, we have Missile here, LCS Missile. This is a Jet cross. This is going to be a little bit later than Jet though. This is more intended for that super dry land type of region, a little bit later in maturity. It's also a little bit taller, as you can see, comparing to these other varieties. Really good cold tolerance though, really great stripe rust resistance. Pretty excited for this variety going into some of those harder to farm type of regions, you know, where even if this variety is a little bit taller, some of those spots, you know, the wheat doesn't get as tall as it really could. So, you know, hedging your bets on some of those maturity and height differences depending on your ground. These are really awesome tools to put in the toolbox. Over here we have LCS Top Gun. It's photoperiod sensitive. It's got a maturity that's more similar to Jet. With its Keldon background, you're going to see it do really well in this region. Keldon has done well in this region, so we're looking forward to see what the potential is on this variety. It's got really nice top end yield potential, really decent stripe rust resistance, good straw strength. It's kind of got everything that you guys are looking for. LCS Jet next to Kyle over here. It's kind of been our industry standard. Jet was a variety similar to Art Deco we brought in from our French program. So it was a discard over in France, and so we decided to give it a second life over here, and it's done really well for growers in this region. So Jet is one of those varieties, you can put it underwater, you can put it on some really marginal ground, and it does well. Having a variety like that is going to be very hard to beat. It's very similar to Shine in that aspect. It's going to be, you know, kind of that ever changing goal that we're trying to accomplish. I think Top Gun is going to be really competitive in that market. You know, Top Gun has got, like I said, really great, awesome yield potential. It is, like I mentioned, photoperiod sensitive, so it's going to wait all winter to really start pushing in the spring, but it pushes really nicely and it pushes really good. So we're excited to see it perform for you guys.
Bailey, I think I heard a statistic, a corn variety in the Midwest now is about 1.7 years, which inventory management, that blows my mind how you would manage that. I think white wheat though, we're not getting too far behind that. Seems like anymore, if we can get a variety that lasts 5-7 years, that's a pretty good run. I think Shine's going to be one of those varieties. You know, we're still going to be selling Shine the end of my career,
right?
You know, which isn't a lot of years left. Jet is kind of, I think, for our entire portfolio, we've been selling Jet longer than any other variety, you know, at our seed plants. Very solid performer. 2020, that was the record year for us. It was like irrigation around Genesee, or really the entire Palouse. I know one farm averaged, I think, 165 bushel farm average with Jet that year.
Awesome.
Pretty phenomenal. Very high yield potential. Once again, you know, who knows what the market's going to tell us what to plant this fall. I always tell growers be diverse. So I think if you got that field that maybe is early, maybe you pull some soil samples that has some high residual nitrogen out there, maybe throw in a field or two of hard red. Club wheat, maybe throw in a field of club wheat. I think, you know, it's a lot more work. It makes fall work a little slower, you know, if you're switching some varieties or classes of wheat. But I think that's, you know, being diverse. I've always preached that. And I think, once again, you know, maybe don't put all your eggs in this basket this fall. I know a lot of growers are thinking that too. But, you know, putting a field or two in, and you have some great genetics out here.
Yeah, we're pretty excited to showcase some of these lines. You know, Blackbird, Missile, Top Gun, these are all fairly new varieties. Top Gun was released this last fall. It's on seed increase this year. Missile and Blackbird are, you know, within the past couple of years. So it's really exciting to see what our breeding program can produce for you guys. One thing I do want to mention is that we do have a lot of experimentals in this block as well as over in the soft whites. I think coming to the field day would be a really great opportunity for you guys guys to see some of these experimentals. We're not going to talk about them too much on the video here, but I think coming out and seeing them, we've got signs up, seeing what that next generation is going to look like for you guys is going to be really important to kind of help figure out what you guys are going to do in the long-term planning.
We're going to be cutting weed here pretty soon. Not here. This is probably still at least 3 weeks, maybe a month away from harvest. We have some Colfax trials that are moving right along. We actually have a farmer strip trial. Could be getting cut in 10 days. So as soon as we start getting data, we'll start posting that on the website. Once we get all the trials put together, or all the trials cut, we'll go ahead and put that together. That's where I really like to see, how those varieties perform across a wide region. We're limited on bin space at all of our seed outlets, so we really want those varieties that are widely adapted, that are going to do well in Fairfield or Colfax or in Deary, Idaho. And so like I said, as soon as we start getting data, we'll get that published. Of course, we have our yearly compendium that we'll put out usually after Thanksgiving. All that data will be in there too. Bailey, I appreciate it. You've been a blessing for the weed industry, in my opinion. You're doing a heck of a job. Hope you don't go anywhere. We want to keep you around, and Limagrain keep bringing us really good genetics.
Yeah,
so.
we've got the pipeline for it. We've got the breeding program. If anyone's ever interested in coming to look at these experimentals, we have plots all over the place. We've also got a really nice demo plot in Walla Walla. So if you guys are ever down in the region, Kyle and I would be more than happy to walk you guys through some of the experimentals and what's coming down in the pipeline.
Yeah, thanks, Bailey.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for watching.